Yep. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Unscripted One-on-One. Again, special week this week. Depending on when you hear this or see this, it's a little bit of a throwback. This week is Mount Vernon Nazarene University's homecoming week. And because of COVID, we had to push things virtual. So decided this week to reach out to some people, and I didn't have to reach out very far for this one. About two offices over, I think. Basically, to get a guy, the man, the myth, the legend, someone people have been asking me to get on for a long time. Let me go ahead and let him introduce himself, and we will go from there.
Hey, I'm Justin Brown. I'm a 2013 grad of MVNU for undergraduate, 2017 for master's program, and yeah, excited to be on here finally. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your family, because I know it's not just you.
Yeah, so my wife Ashley is also an MVNU grad. She graduated in 2014 with an education degree. Ran cross country for Coach Chip Wilson, who's now the athletic director, and so we've got deep MVNU ties. Took the boys up there a couple months back and told them some stories. They're 2-1, so they weren't listening to a thing, but we fed them the stories at least. And yeah, so Judah's 2 and Jacoby's 1, and that's our crew right now.
And Justin, let me just tell you that the day you walk them when they're not 2-1, but when they're 16, 17, and you're telling them those stories, it's a little different. I'm just going to say, I'm just telling you, because I got one that's a sophomore there and one that has looked at potentially going there. As you know, we talk about this on a regular basis, but for our audience, yeah, it's a little different, because I took Austin up there when he was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. And Dave Parsons gave him a T-shirt that said MVNU baseball. And at that point, we had no clue that my guy would be wearing a uniform one day for the Naz. So I'm telling you now, just, be ready. Be ready.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's a phenomenal place. My 2 older siblings went there. My parents met there actually in the sidewalk in front of Pioneer Hall. So it's a unique experience. Going there as a student with that kind of deep history and tradition. My mom, as I think like a 12-year-old, was at the groundbreaking for the college when it was just a farm, in Mount Vernon. And, so I love the place. It's a tremendous place, and so thankful to have gone there. So.
Well, so let's start there. Do you want to start now and go backwards, or do you want to start backwards and go forwards to where you are today? What's best for you?
That's a great question. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, like I mentioned, my mom with MVNU, she, had, or MVNC at the time, had a deep history. So really from the time I was negative decades, MVNU has been a part of my life. And, like I said, my parents met there. My mom was a 2-time homecoming queen. So kind of a Heisman Trophy thing was talked about a lot in my family. A lot of allegations, though. She won it as a junior and I think won it as a senior. My dad has told the story many times. And, I know stolen elections is a hot topic, but she didn't actually get the honor. They gave it to someone else. My dad has many times shared that it was rigged. And so, she's unofficially a 2-time homecoming queen. But I can recall as a kid going up to homecoming events. I can remember going, in middle school and when my siblings were there and watching some Cougar basketball games and seeing guys like Kenny Chafin was if they would have had posters, I would have had a Kenny Chafin poster in my room, and even Chip Wilson, point guard, Steve Maves, the big, 7-footer as a center. And I just lived the place before, I was even coming into my own as an athlete. And I can remember, baseball, Coach Veal has always had those, he hasn't done them lately, but like a baseball card schedule. And I can remember being a freshman in high school and looking down through, that. And we've had MVNU part of our family for a long, long time. So
did Steve Harvey come out and say, I'm sorry, she didn't win? Did that happen or no?
Controversial, it was like a lot of backdoor dealings, I guess. And my mom blushes every time the story's told and corrects that it didn't happen that way. But my dad has been adamant. I certainly don't want to cause any turmoil in the MVNU alumni community, but there's some heavy allegations going around that it was rigged. So.
Well, honestly, in 4 years, I never got voted to Mr. MVNC, and I always took that a little personal. I mean,
sure.
I campaigned pretty hard my last 2 years. I mean, it was epic, and didn't even make it to court. So not even on the Mr. MVNC court. So, but here I am, and here you are. Anyway, all right. So, and I know your story because again, we work together. So, where did you decide in high school, I want to go to MVNU? That was your only one, or did you go through a recruiting process because you were a pitcher, right? What was that like? And did you have some other schools online too, or was it always MVNU and that's it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was a two-sport athlete in high school. I wrestled growing up. My brother wrestled and was a wrestling coach, and so I was into that pretty heavily as a high school athlete. That really affected my weight and development physically. So I was battling that dynamic, and I'm not that old, but even back then, the recruiting process wasn't what it is now. It wasn't on people's radars to pursue it, in the early years of high school and things like that. So, quite frankly, in high school, I wasn't very good. So I think I had a dream of pursuing baseball at MVNU. I wasn't looking at a lot of places. I think Ohio Dominican was one other spot. I had a little bit of interest and went to a camp or something, was offered like a JV roster spot. But, I was a late bloomer, truthfully. And as a senior in high school, it didn't have any real abilities. In hindsight, knowing what I know now, kind of recruiting process, I certainly would have not have recruited me. So I really wanted to go to MVNU and give it a shot just because, again, with the backdrop I had, I kind of idolized the program and just loved what was going on there. And my sister, who's 5 years older than me, had some friends who were baseball players at MVNU, and they'd come to the house down in Westerville. And so it was always really what I was after. So I remember going as a senior, the fall of my senior year, going, and did a visit and did the whole thing, and threw a bullpen for Coach Veal and Coach Laszlo. Dick Laszlo was the assistant at the time, and Laz, he's a stud. But I remember, I think I hit like 74 or 75 on the radar gun, which is a joke, for that level of program and who they had in terms of arms at the time. And, so I remember, Veal radar gun, and I remember thinking, that's all I got. Like, this is it. Let's go. And he was cordial and sharp and things like that, but basically lined up like, if you're going to come here, you're going to walk on. We're not giving you a dime. We're not giving you, anything. And I remember my dad and I hopping in the car, and we were going down Route 3, and I remember us looking at each other thinking like that was all we needed. I just needed an open door. Things are going to work out. I was going into that thinking he might say no. And the idea that he left the door open and said, you can come try out, we were good. And so I kind of had committed at that point to this is what I was going to pursue, finish wrestling and baseball my senior year. And we got up there and got rolling. So that was kind of how we ended up at MVNU. But from a recruiting standpoint, it was non-existent, truthfully.
And so that's amazing considering what you do today, which we'll get to that because I think we're headed that direction. But so given that, now walk me through. You walk on at Mount Vernon and had a decorated career. I don't want to give away the end of the book before we open the first chapter, but we know you had a decorated career and have gone on to since more. And I don't want to steal all the thunder for the future. So you walk on at Mount Vernon. What was that like?
Yeah, so the process, again, walk-on tryouts occur, at any college program, pretty similar, but I had about a 6-week window where it was, hey, you're going to throw live innings, you're going to practice, you're going to do the whole thing, and when the chips fall, we'll see where we're at. And I remember moving in, and there were key moments in that fall that were difficult that you kind of get pushed, and exposed a little bit. It was not a comfortable 6 weeks. I remember at the end of it thinking, I'm glad this is over with. Whatever happens, happens. But like things like, for example, you come in and they had some good players in the class that I came in with, and I remember at orientation, even the first weekend of the whole experience, you're already experiencing a hard transition, moving away from home and moving in and all that stuff. But I remember, some kid had transferred from another good college. He was coming into that same new student orientation, and we had kind of struck up some conversations because we were baseball guys. And I remember him in front of the chapel saying he had made a statement that I remember thinking, this is trouble if it's true. He said, yeah, I was talking to Coach Veal, and they're not going to take any walk-ons this year. He was on scholarship. He was like sought after. I was not. And I just remember there was like a group, 2 or 3 of us, and he had thought that I was also an established guy coming in. And I remember hearing that thinking, this is going to be a problem if this is true. He sounds credible. I don't know his backstory. He's talking a lot, hindsight being he, I'm not going to give the name away, but he proceeded for the next few years to be kind of a guy that just was a pathological liar, transferred out 1 year later. But at the time I didn't know that. And I remember thinking, this is a problem. They're not taking walk-ons. I'm coming to walk on. Apparently he knows something I don't. This is going to be an embarrassing experience, and we'll see how it goes. So I remember, we got into walk-on, tryouts and inter squads and all that kind of stuff. And, I had performed in those scrimmages about like you would expect with what I had.
Right.
Before, I'm not a hard thrower. I was left-handed, so that was in my favor, but I was walking guys left and right. I had no put away pitch. I really didn't have the stuff to be there, truthfully, in hindsight. And I remember just kind of catching on with a few seniors. A guy, named Jason Decker was I think a senior at the time. Cody Veal, was a junior or sophomore at the time. A kid named Caleb Wright was a year older than me. And I just remember getting some encouragement from those guys as time went on that, we're on the right path here, even though I'm getting lit up and balls flying everywhere, and I'm, walking guys, and things are not going well in that regard. And I remember feeling like, okay, the only way this is going to work is if I can prove to these guys and the coaching staff that I can be an asset to what's going on here. Because I'm certainly not an asset on the mound right now, but from a team standpoint, from the whole package, I got to make up some ground in those areas. And so when I wasn't throwing, I was running on the warning track, and I made it a point, like when I show up, I'm not stopping. I'm going to be moving the entire time. I was the guy chasing foul balls. I'm just doing every single thing I can do to prove that I can be an asset. And because I needed to prove that I belonged in this environment. And so we get through the 6 weeks of fall ball. And, I remember some of those guys I had mentioned, I was building good relationships with, and they kind of said in the individual exit meetings, hey, they're going to, put in a good word for me or something like that. And I remember thinking, sweet, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the coaching staff and, how's it all going to land? And I remember going into my individual meeting and Coach Veal basically saying, from a pitching standpoint, there's just no way you're going to see the mound here. Like, it's just not going to happen. Wow. And certainly not this year, but we'd love to have you around. We'd love to be on the team. You won't travel. You're going to, you can dress for home games, you can practice, but you're not going to travel, and we certainly don't see you pitching this year. And again, it was just like, that same experience on the visit with my dad. Like, I remember thinking, that's all I needed. The door is still open. I'm going through these checkpoints, and the only thing you're trying to avoid is a no and a get out of here. And so it was a win. So that ended up, how the walk-on process went. The next year I did redshirt and didn't see the field. I was making progress, though. There's something about being in a positive culture, in a good environment. We had some hard throwers. I mean, we had some dudes in the low 90s, and I was just absorbing like a sponge and was getting better. Again, the wrestling background, I was catching up in terms of development physically. I think in that year I came in at 160, and by the end of my freshman year I was like 175. And it's just getting into the right systems and the right culture and the right environment. And And so, I was making progress. We get to the end of the year, end of the spring, we have another exit meeting, and I was curious how I was going to go, because in some of our practices, I was starting to prove like I'm not the same guy I was in September, and things were changing a little bit. I was gaining velocity, and we get to that meeting, and Coach Veal again said, next year you're going to have to walk on again. We can't guarantee you a roster spot. We've got arms coming in, and it's been great having you, but and that was the first time in the process where my mentality, I think, changed. I wasn't looking for open doors and avoiding no's anymore. I kind of started to feel like I was heading in the right direction. So truthfully, and we've had many conversations, he and I, about it. This isn't news, but I left pissed. I left like, this is we're in a totally different ballgame now. And in conversations, he has expressed that he was dangling a carrot on purpose, and he does that with everyone. And this is just how he's operating, why he's so successful as a coach. But it worked, plain and simple. So the next summer, I got after it even more, and I was already at a pretty high clip. In hindsight, you look back, and I didn't have a lot going on. I worked in the summer. I played some summer ball. I was pretty much obsessed with closing the gap between where I started and where our top arms were at. And so we come back in the next fall, and again, I'm coming back with some relationships and some equity compared to the year before, but still no guarantees. There was no guarantee. It was, if I lay an egg, if I don't perform, you're gone. So that fall, really, this would have been the fall of 2009. Everything began to shift in the trajectory of my playing career. I remember the first inter-squad outing. I mean, I was on a mission. I had been on a mission since leaving Veal's office, when I was told I was going to have to walk on again. And so that first outing in fall ball, through 2 innings, so that's 6 outs. I struck out 5 guys. And on the radar gun, I was up to 87. Wow. So it was like, all right, we're in a totally different ballgame now. And so systematically, that fall, things started to change. I started to get credibility with guys. And when fall ball was done, that next fall, so that's, my sophomore season or second season, redshirt freshman season, I left fall ball in the starting rotation. I was the third starter out of the next spring. So everything kind of shifted at that point. Long-winded, but that was kind of the story.
That's like Rudy. I literally, I'm not kidding. Like, I think anybody listening to this, and I hope, again, I have no idea where this lands. I don't know if my wife's the only one that listens, and God bless her.
Probably threw me out after the allegations about the 2-time homecoming thing, and I get it. So.
No, and thank God for my wife, because she's the one person that I know listens to all these, and so she's probably on her walk or run right now and listening to this, and so shout out Heather. But that's like Rudy, man. If a young player is listening to this, that story, because this, you've been in this business a while. And we'll touch on this, I think, the next phase. As a coach, you've seen this, man. You've seen, we all get caught up in the rankings and the what team you play for and where how many, man. Now you got Rapsodo and you got this and you got that and you got numbers and exit view. Man, at the end of the day, there's a want to factor that can't be measured and no disrespect to all that other stuff I just mentioned. Shout out to Chris Valentine. We love PBR. We love those guys, right? And we do.
I know you need to get Chris on the Unscripted podcast. I'm going to interrupt you there. He needs to get on.
It's his turn, right? He put a lot of pressure on me and you to get.
He mentioned some things to me, and I'm not gonna blow the top off, but he's got interest, and you need to get him on. So
all right, we gotta get Chris on. But shout out to PBR. Shout out to all that they do, because at the end of the day, again, Chris Valentine, probably the most powerful guy in that world right now.
Oh, he's the godfather of high school Ohio baseball for sure. So
absolutely. But at the end of the day, PBR doesn't have a want to number, as you just said. And again, no disrespect to PBR whatsoever. But any player listening to this, if by some chance it lands on some kid's podcast or on their iPod or iPod, do I have iPods even exist? iPhone, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hear this somewhere. hear that, the fact that there's a want to factor for every player. You could have walked out of Coach Veal's office that day and said, I'm done. I'm done. And unfortunately, I think you and I see this a lot in this business. A lot of players would say, I'm done. I'm going to transfer. I'm going somewhere else, or I'm just going to quit. And at the end of the day, you didn't quit. And so let's fast forward to your senior year. Give me all, how did you finish your career decorated, correct?
Yeah, by some standards for sure. I mean, so my senior year, I was the number one arm for MVNU and was all conference and all region. But I think to tie the story, the stuff I'm most proud of in the playing is I was voted captain my junior and senior year by my teammates. So Veal has always done that where teammates vote. And so I think, the end game in hindsight that I see, years removed was all of that process of getting better and improving and really chasing just being the best I could be, like as a pitcher, pay dividends and just create a credibility amongst my teammates. And, so that's probably what I'm most proud of. But from a competitive standpoint, I wasn't a walk on and I never got, shoved the door, I guess. So
yeah. Well, at the end of the day, and I should mention this, anybody listening, watching, whatever, Justin, JB's a humble guy. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to come out and go, well, I was this, and this. That's not you. So in fairness, let me just say you had a decorated career. And what people really need to hear is you went from walk on who could have walked out after your freshman year to being number one starter on your senior year. That's incredible. Like, because every year Coach Veal is no slouch. MVNU, as we would both, I think, agree, is definitely no slouch in baseball. Just because they're NAIA, I think they're way overlooked. And again, I'm a little biased because I have a certain right-hander that plays for him. But at the end of the day, way overlooked. You went from walk-on to one starter and a captain on the team. That's huge. That's huge. And again, you're not going to say that because you're humble enough. I'll say it for you. That's massive. Like that's big time stuff. That's Rudy type stuff. That's the kind of stuff that they show on a Saturday, before a football game. They highlight some kid and everybody's like, wow, that's incredible. That's you, man. That's big time. So the legend of JB is true. Okay. And so and that has nothing to do with the fact that we work together. That's just true. Anybody else sitting there telling me that story, I'm going to say that's not every day, man. It's especially in today's culture, this. And so let's fast forward because this as what your next role was, and that was coach. So talk to me about coaching a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was done playing and I wanted to get into coaching, period. It really started to become a desire my senior year. And, I had always admired Coach Veal and just saw how he operated and the level of success he was at. And one of his mentors, Sam Riggleman, was Spring Arbor's head coach, and we would interact with him. He's an ABCA Hall of Famer. So I kind of admired what they had going on and what Coach Veal still has going on. The idea of you had a program of guys every year coming in and out, the influence that they've had. I mean, Riggleman retired with 40 years of head coaching experience, 40 years of leading a college team. So you do the math on that, at 20 guys on average a year. I mean, so like I admired the influence they had and felt like this was the path for me. So I transitioned from player to assistant coach for Coach Veal. Became a grad assistant, got my master's degree, and was handling the pitching staff and had a lot of influence in coordinating our recruiting and different things of that nature with the team. And so I was there for 3.5 years, I want to say, as an assistant. In that time span, Ashley and I got married and so I think it was 2016, first opportunity to become a head coach came up and I think Ashley never ready for a transition. We love MVNU, but I had been there 9 straight years at that point.
Wow.
I'm that guy at homecoming where you're still here, so like, I think there was a lot that, as much as we love the place, it was probably in our best interest to get new experiences and see things. And truthfully, the more we've done that, the more we've realized how great of a place it is. So moved up to Minnesota and was the head coach at North Central University, a Division III school up there. And then moved to Toccoa Falls, Georgia, another NAI NCCA program, and was a head coach there. And in that time span of moving around, Ashley and I added Judah and Jacoby to the roster for our family, and really started to feel a tug to get back to Central Ohio. We enjoyed the places, we enjoyed the adventure component, but just the wear and tear of you're enjoying your boys and their babies, and this is a blast, and other people you really love are seeing them twice a year, and it was just like, this isn't getting it. And so then the opportunity at Bo Jackson Elite Sports came open, and next thing you know, we're up here. So been in the baseball realm here for a while now.
Yeah, and so let me ask you that when it was coaching, because of your path. And so let me just rewind here. You went from a walk-on throwing 75 to the pitching coach after you graduate. Like that's a huge trajectory. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think somebody's going to reach down and go, well, that kid's throwing 75. Let's have him coach up our team. Like that's it's a credit to your hard work. But it's a listen. If anybody listening to this, and we're going to touch on what you do next, because I think all this story supports what your passion has become, and that's what you're doing now. But so you go from 75, 76-ish to leading a pitching staff to coaching. That's an incredible trajectory. That's not normal, I wouldn't say, for most guys. So you go through all that. Now, let me ask you this. When you were coaching, because you were that guy, that walk-on, that kid, the Rudy, did you have a soft spot, or did you have an eye for players that would come to your office and say, Coach, I just want to wear a uniform, or running the track, as you said, taking ground ball? Did you have an eye for that, or a soft spot for guys like that on your rosters as you progressed?
I think there certainly was. As I'm hearing you describe it, I immediately can think of guys that, you have a sensitivity to want to include them. But I also think my experience in that worked to where I was probably harder on those types of guys on the roster, because really my entire coaching career, through that lens was, it was frustrating to see guys who said they wanted to maybe get in the starting rotation or wanted to become, whatever accolade and I would think, you have no idea how much it takes,
Right.
And it's not like I got drafted. At the end of the day, it was a small college career and all that, but I'm just saying that the progress, that was available to anyone who would do the work, and so, like, I think I had a sensitivity for the walk-on guy, but I was also very hard on those guys, because often, and I think this is true for all of us, what we say does not match up with what we're doing. What we say we want just doesn't align often with the life we're living in pursuit of those things. And I think in that regard, it was probably a reverse effect on those types of kids that, because I wasn't just glad to be there as a freshman and sophomore. It wasn't just, man, this is sweet,
Yeah.
I do remember, as a freshman, again, when Vila outlined that like redshirt, don't travel thing, I didn't know if I was going to get like a uniform. Like I didn't know if I was going to get gear. And I do remember, again, a lot of this, was celebrated with my dad. My brother had a huge impact as well, but my dad and I were really journeying this together. And I remember calling him and saying, the day they handed out hats, I got a hat, like no guarantees, and it was like, man, like, sweet, I got a hat. Cause again, you're not sure if you're going to get left out of that kind of stuff and where you stand. But when you come from that and you put in the work, and then your position changes, your status on the roster changes. And I look at it and go, it's not like I, was doing things that other people couldn't do. It was just a consistent choice to continue to make progress and move forward. And I think as a coach, that always frustrated me with guys who weren't choosing to do that in some ways. So,
well, it's interesting, JB, because, the summer that Austin got to play, but he played 2 summers with BJE, but the one in particular was that junior year. That was that recruitable year. That was the big summer, right? So, and I remember talking about this around the office, and I didn't play baseball growing up. I didn't play. I was an internet champion, as you know.
Right, of
But
course.
so, but that being said, the world's changed. But I think today's player, and I remember them talking about this around the office, and it kind of had a light bulb moment for me. Today's player is playing 3 games at UC on that. That's a freaking amazing stadium. Or they're going down to Atlanta for a week or 10 days to play at Perfect Game and all these other remarkable places where back in the day, so to speak, that was your championship game. If you were lucky, you got to play on a college field. Most of the time it was dirt mounds on the back of a high school field somewhere, and I think that changes today's player in many ways. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not. That's not my side of the business. I'm not that wise, but I have to think having a son that was in the mix a little bit there, it changes. Like I don't want to say they're spoiled, but you just said it. Like if a kid has played all of his weekend games that you see on a turf field with a brick outfield or ivy or wherever else they're playing games today, that I don't want to say they don't respect hard work, but what's there to work for? And especially when you go on a recruit visit, it's like, yeah, that's cool. I've played him better. You know what I mean? And this university is trying to get this kid to come play there. And in the meantime, in the summer, they're playing at places like major universities, right? And again, no disrespect to UC, gorgeous facility. My point is, it is a gorgeous facility, and not every kid's, I think it takes away some of the shine. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion in the industry about those types of dilemmas, and it is certainly debated. Is this the best format for development? Is this the best format for everything you're describing, and identifying people with grit? Truthfully, I think the trait we're talking about is grit, and
Right.
I having seen that transition and seen what it is now, I still believe guys who are in baseball they call them dudes,
Right.
a dude, and a dude is always going to be a dude, and so even with the amenities and the glamour and everything that can be short-term fool's gold type of stuff, I still believe an individual with character and grit is always going to rise. That's been true in today's day and age with rankings. That's been true in the 1950s, and it'll be true 50 years from now. And so I think there is some of that certainly people are motivated by maybe some things that are not going to transfer to college and things like that. But the same principles hold true. If you've got character and grit, your motor is always going to be running, and you'll stand out even more, I think, than in the past. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. But I think you're on it for sure.
Well, so now you currently, your current role is player development. That's really your heartbeat, and not only that, but leadership. And so, and I think anybody that's listening to this is going to hear the player development side. You clearly have got a track record from your own story to those that you've seen as a coach and in your journey and your travels. So let's forward now, because I really want to make sure everybody gets this before we close out. And I appreciate you spending late night now because you got young kids and you got them tucked in and coming on late. But so let's talk about stay the course a little bit, because I know that's really, really, really where your passion is and where your gift is. I mean, you have grasped your giftedness and it's stay the course. So let's talk about stay the course, if you don't mind. Tell me a little bit about how that started and where you see that going.
Yeah, so it started about a year ago. I had been bouncing ideas around. I had been writing, but not publishing articles in leadership development and around this idea of staying the course. And no doubt it has ties back to my personal journey. But I think as I went through that journey, it really has given me a heightened awareness as I look and scan the lives of leaders that are in positions that we admire and they have a credibility. I'm beginning to see, as I study the life of leaders, they've all got this same type of trajectory.
Yeah.
They've all got principles here that are part of personal leadership development. So what I'm doing with my website, staythecourseleaders.com, is not, management, or it's not CEO type stuff. It's really, how can you develop as a leader personally? How can I develop as a leader personally? So, the big project right now in January or February 2021, I'll be releasing my first book. I plan to write for many years. This is not my end game, is to publish this and be done. I want to continue it for decades. But my first book is going to be titled Stay the Course. And it really is getting at the heart of what I've identified as I've studied the lives of leaders up close and from a distance. 4 principles that you find in all leaders that get to high levels. And number one, they start small. They're not afraid of no guarantees. They're not afraid of starting as the bottom person on the totem pole. Number two, they embrace change. Number three, they don't quit. And then number four, they play the long game. So they're looking for decades long of end goals. And so, I've studied lives of leaders. There's stories of leaders in the book. And I'm really, excited to get that launched and get that going. And it real probably will serve as a launch pad for some other things that'll be coming to my website with online courses. And I'm teaming up with Marcus Williams, Marcus, and he and I are kind of merging a partnership, and that'll all kind of go public here in December and January, but we're going to kind of continue to expand what we're doing on the Stay the Course website and get some materials out there that can help individuals grow. So.
Well, Marcus is also a veteran of the Unscripted podcast.
Right. Yeah.
So shout out Unscripted. No, you just said this, excuse me, something in my throat. You just said this, but what a time to have something in your throat on a podcast, but excuse me. And not COVID.
I choked up because my mom got robbed at the homecoming. I get it,
No, you just said, and I assume this, right? It's your book, but those 4 pillars that you just talked about, that's your story, right? I mean, that's your story.
Right. Yeah.
It's absolutely your story. So, and let me, for anybody listening to this, understand, I walked into JB's office, probably his first day on the job, and he's got his bookshelf set up, and it looks just like my bookshelf at home. Like we study and read and follow and appreciate, I think, a lot of the same type, like Tony Dungy, right? Just one to name it. One of my probably top 5 favorite books is, Courageous Leadership. I mean, one of my top 5 favorite books is Quiet Strength. Like those type of books were the same thing that were on your bookshelf. So let me testify to this guy's character if you haven't heard it already, but also he's a student of leadership. And so, but what I'm just stunned about here is, as you took you talked about those 4 things, that is your story. And I don't know if I don't want to steal your book. I haven't seen your book. I haven't seen a manuscript, but I got to assume in a way you're telling your story, because that is those 4 things. And I'm excited. I'm excited for Stay the Course. I really am. And if anybody's listening to this, it's staythecourseleadership.com. Is that right?
Stay the Course Leaders. And the best way, if you'd like more information, is just go to staythecourseleaders.com/subscribe and get you information through my newsletter. Won't spam you. If you want to unsubscribe, that's fine too. But that would be the best way.
And unlike me, you don't post like every single day and 17, 18, 20 times a day. It's once a week. So he won't
goes out
your inbox, right?
Tuesday mornings at 6 a.m. and that's it. So for now.
And it's great stuff. It's not just a quick hitter just to get through the week. It's very thought out. It's very thorough. It's studied. It's from what you're reading, from what you're learning, and that's the thing. I think you're always a student. You're always learning. All of us are, but I know that you study and read quite a bit and really pour in and invest into this. So I'm excited for the book. I'm excited for where this is going to go. Love Marcus. Love Marcus.
Yeah.
Love the partnership. Love it all. It's great. So anything else you want to share before we close out? Just about where you're headed, what you've learned, any last nuggets of inspiration before we check out?
No, I mean, I think 2020 has been such a tough year for everyone. And I think what it is doing, and we're all experiencing it, is just revealing the systems you've got in place internally. And there's never been a better time to double down on, character and the long game driven mentalities. So I'm wanting to kind of deposit into that space, and I'm trying to grow in that big time.
Well, JB, I'm glad you came on today. I'm glad that our friend Chris Valentine pushed and pushed for you to come on today. I'm glad you're an alum, but and you should have a couch in your office. I didn't mention this yet. You should have actually a couch in your office for the amount of times that I drop in and we have a little therapy session. And whether it's my right hander that's at Mount Vernon or leadership or anything else, man, you've invested in me, and I'm a better man today because we get to work together every day. Like, and that's just truth. That's not podcast talk. That's truth. I'm a better man today. I learned from you and your wisdom, and I just appreciate your level-headedness. In you just said it, like 2020 is insane, and a lot of us are losing our minds. And in the meantime, you're over there just chill. Like, hey, we're gonna do this, and
it's just, that's an exterior persona. That's not reality.
that's the next.
We're all navigating this thing, and that's just what comes out. But that's not how I feel most days. So I'm with you 100%.
Well, that'll be the next book. You can talk about how to be chill in the face of 2020.
Sure. Yeah.
Credits. I little what do they call it?
We'll get you for sure in the front cover. Yeah, we'll get you set up. So
I don't want my face anywhere. But no, man, I appreciate you. I love you to death. I'm glad you're a part of our team. I'm glad I get to interact with you every day, and staythecourse.leaders.com, right?
Yep.
And and everything else is up there. So anybody that wants to find it can find it. Go Cougs, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, man.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you, man.
See ya.
Yeah.